90 years ago, the Virginia Farm Bureau made our local farmers a promise to protect and preserve a way of life they work so hard to establish. Today, our insurance agents work to protect all Virginians, not just farmers. We want to keep Virginia, Virginia. More information is at farmbureauadvantage.com.
The remarkable soybean. From its oil, we get products like ink, candles, and paint. From its meal, we get a high-protein fiber used in foods and animal feeds. Natural soy is replacing chemicals and products you use every day. You can learn more about soybeans at vasoybean.com.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Ishii, and this is Virginia Farming Television. Virginia has a long and colorful history with raising hemp. Dates all the way back to Jamestown in the early 1600s. Well, now, here in the 21st century, there's a lot of new interest in research involving industrial hemp production right here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. A lot of farmers are involved and a lot of farmers have questions, and we're going to learn a lot about industrial hemp production in Virginia on this episode of Virginia Farming. I'm Jeff Ishii. When we talk about hemp production on Virginia farms, we can trace a history all the way back to the early 1600s, when Virginia was just a colony. The settlers at Jamestown were actually required to grow hemp, which was seen as an important crop to be used in a variety of ways. The fibers of the hemp plant are exceptionally strong, and colonial settlers used the fiber to make rope and sailcloth. In the late 1700s, a war for independence came to the colonies, and hemp was seen as an essential crop. In fact, the fledgling Navy said, without hemp lines and sails, they may as well just keep their ships tied to the docks. Other than tobacco, hemp was probably the highest value crop in early Virginia. But then came the association of hemp with a related plant, marijuana. In the 20th century, Virginia and other states began to criminalize the production of both marijuana and hemp. The plants were often confused because they look exactly alike. Officials said the harmful effects of marijuana were simply too great a threat to society. And as far as hemp, well, there were new synthetic fibers being developed that were just as strong as hemp. So for decades now, it has been illegal to grow hemp in Virginia. There is, however, a renewed interest in growing industrial hemp in the Old Dominion. That's according to Professor Samuel Morton at James Madison University in Harrisonburg. Morton leads a research project on industrial hemp production and tells us how he got involved.
Originally, I grew up in Tennessee. I've moved around a little bit through the process of academic life. I spent some time in Kentucky working on biofuels, and we were looking at lignocellulosic biofuels, switchgrass, miscanthus, poplar, and things like that. And in the process of doing that kind of cursory overview, hemp kept popping up as a really ideal crop. Unfortunately, we weren't really allowed to really explore it because that was before the Farm Bill changes and the opening of the industrial hemp allowances in the states. Still kind of on the back burner. I came over here to JMU, really great opportunity to be a faculty, and there was an interest from the state about research programs focused on industrial hemp, and we had a lot of growers that were interested in that, but there needed to be a second half of it, and so I kind of joined our program to focus on how we use hemp. And my specific area is bioenergy. So how we might use it as a biofuel and a biofuel feedstock, but I am a chemical engineer by practice. And so what I focus on is much more of the commercial conversion scale of what we would do with it. So if we pull hemp out of the ground, how do we change it into something else that's part of the market?
Morton explains how industrial hemp might, for instance, be used in the animal agriculture sector.
Well, right now there are some challenges. It's not actively used per se in commercial agriculture because of restrictions and regulations related to hemp's other hemp's other cousins. But right now, I think you have probably one predominant component of the plant, which is the seed and the seed materials, cake or oil. They're really high in lipids. They're an excellent protein source. They're similar in what they can provide to agricultural commodities, to barley and soybeans and other of the kind of oily seed cake varieties. I think there's a lot of interest in using it as kind of a rotational crop in addition to. It doesn't currently have a big market, so there's a lot of opportunity to incorporate it into agriculture. That being said, there's also the potential of using the material as a foraging feedstock as well for foragers. Now, whether that would work well or not is still unclear. There's been some interest in the hemp fiber itself earlier in its life cycle before it matures and begins to kind of harden up as actually an active forager source.
Another professor at James Madison who has been working on the project is Dr. Michael Renfro. He says people sometimes confuse industrial hemp with marijuana, but that isn't necessarily something that farmers should be worried about.
If someone was trying to sneak a marijuana crop into your hemp field, they're not going to be planting it at the same time you are. So as you patrol your field and look for germination, and you're going to recognize something is amiss, something is coming in late. So that's going to be easy to detect. If they're trying to grow marijuana and have it as a crop for future generations, they don't want it anywhere near hemp, because if the hemp pollinates the marijuana, then it's going to lower the THC content, and they're not going to have a good product either.
Hemp has a rich history in Virginia. According to historians, in 1619, it was illegal not to grow hemp in Jamestown, as it was such an important resource.
Hemp kept the British Navy afloat. So it's rather ironic that we end up now it being a banned substance. And it's because of the sweeping nature of the Controlled Substances Act that they failed to recognize that there are differences among varieties of this crop, just like Brussels and broccoli, Brussels sprouts and broccoli are both from the same species, but they're different cultivars, or pinto beans and green beans are the same species, but different cultivars. Hemp and marijuana are different cultivars, vastly different cultivars of the same ancestral plant, Cannabis sativa. So what we need is for Congress to recognize that farmers can develop varietal differences and recognize one is a commercial crop and one is a drug. And we're not advocating legalization of marijuana in any way, but we would like to be able to grow hemp, market it, sell it. Right now, for research purposes, we can grow it, but we're still not allowed to sell it or get it into the stream of commerce at all. We have to either use it on site or destroy it. So what we're doing in our research program is we're using an oil seed cultivar. We press the seed for the oil, convert that to biodiesel, use that in the farm equipment. Then the press cake that's left over, we feed that to animals, livestock feed, and then the stems we're going to chop and use for animal bedding. Well, the United States is the only industrialized country that does not allow the production of hemp. We have a lot of hemp products. We have hemp textiles. We have hemp food within the human food chain as well as animal food chain, but we're importing it all. We have a company here in Virginia that is marketing animal bedding as a product. They have to import the herd from Europe. Again, why can't we be growing this locally and producing it and supplying it to the local markets instead of bringing it in from overseas? It just doesn't make much sense. Virginia needs to get engaged in the hemp economy.
One of the students enrolled in the Industrial Hemp Research Program at James Madison University is Hunter Hoggard. He's a native of Virginia Beach. With no involvement in agriculture in his background, Hoggard says it was the technology surrounding environmental issues that initially attracted him to study about industrial hemp production in the ISAT, or Integrated Science and Technology program at JMU.
Overall, the ISAT program, we talk a lot about systems, and basically systems modeling in a nutshell is looking at how things interact with various portions of, let's say, we're talking about the environment now, how it interacts with the soil, the air quality, the atmosphere, and people in general. And systems modeling really kickstarted my interest in industrial hemp because over time, if you have industrial hemp as a part of agriculture in America, there may actually be a significant difference in the carbon dioxide output and input, and that might actually switch the climate change into more of a negative effect than more positive.
Hoggard says he has come to appreciate agriculture and he was keen on learning how things grow, like industrial hemp.
I was involved the entire step of the way, from marking out my plots to doing the research beforehand to get the right amount of seeds per acre. Decided to go with 45 pounds an acre. There's some varying publications saying maybe more is better for fiber, maybe less is better, so I decided to go with the middle ground with 45. So decided to map out my plots. We use a particular plot planner from another institution outside of Virginia that has really made this process a whole lot easier than doing my original plan, was planting every seed by hand. So thankful for that. So I was involved with that, and every step of the way I was taking measurements. I did soil samples on it, and I've basically come to love the crop, watching it grow from seed to 8 foot tall as it is now. So,
being a college student, Hoggard said his fellow students ask a lot of questions about his research project.
They ask, what's the difference between hemp and marijuana? And I say, first and foremost, it's the THC composition in hemp versus marijuana. Anything with less than a 0.3% THC is considered industrial hemp. And then they say, okay, so marijuana, everything above 0.3, and I say, well, technically, yes. So that's the first thing that kind of clears the air. Another thing they ask is the difference between male and females. A lot of the I guess people that aren't exactly tenured with this research, they think that hemp is the male plants and the marijuana is the female plants, when in reality, it's just it's the same genus, but it's a different species of plants. So you have males and females just like everything else, but industrial hemp is basically its own crop and its own little sector of that cannabis.
One of the farmers involved in the research project is Glen Rhodes, who produces corn, soybeans, poultry, and dairy on his family farm in Rockingham County. Rhodes says working with college students and other young millennials in a research project is interesting.
A lot of students are excited about, I guess, the sustainable factor of the crop. It can replace hemp. Hemp can replace pulpwood for paper, can replace cotton for fiber. Not that it will right away, but the fact that it's somewhat environmental friendly, grows with fewer inputs than other crops, fewer pesticides. So that's a lot of what the younger generation is interested in, is something that they would call sustainable.
When Rhodes is talking with other farmers, two topics always seem to come up.
The big question is, can we make any money growing it, and can we grow it? Those are two questions. Currently, there's no good market for hemp per se. There's some markets developing, but right now it's still kind of in the research phase. We're trying to do farm scale research, make it worthwhile getting out the grain drill, getting out the combine, but yet not planting so much that we have nothing to do with the crop after we grow it. So the two big questions are, can we grow it and can we make money?
When pressed by other farmers on the topic of hemp and profitability, Rhodes says this.
The question is, how much can you make? The answer is, we really don't know. The Canadians have been growing hemp for a number of years. So let's say you get 800 pounds of seed per acre. You can get probably from 500 to 2,000, depending on the varieties and so on. We're way behind other crops in genetic development. This crop hasn't been growing here for many years, so we've got a lot of catching up to do. But the question is, how much money can you make per acre? And the answer I'd say is, I just don't know.
When asked about taking valuable farmland out of production just to assist with university research, Rhodes had this comment.
Well, it's one of those things. It's fun to be involved in an industry that's just getting started. By working with my family, we have resources to do some of these odd things like do biofuel or do hemp production. Currently, the research in Virginia is being funded primarily by the farmers themselves, and some money comes in from the universities, but there's not a lot of grant money floating around to do research, so it's self-funded.
One of the questions a Virginia farmer might ask is, what type of soil and what type of environment is it best to grow hemp? Morton says those issues are very much a part of their research.
Soil type, well, any of the environmental phenomena can be pretty significant. Different hemp varieties will actually tolerate different things. We've got really great soil here on the farm we're at now. It's that nice sandy loam soil. It's great for growing soybean and corn. We've got clay soils. Hemp's done all right in certain kinds of clay soils. It's a variety-specific sort of plant. And the varieties are almost all produced internationally right now. So we might get some from Canada. Most of what you see in the field today are Canadian varieties. We have French varieties, we've had Polish varieties, we've had Italian and Spanish varieties, and they are all kind of acclimated to different soil types. I think you're probably standing on right now the best possible soil to grow hemp in. But hemp's got a pretty significant tolerance for soil types. Now, there are going to be types that particular varieties don't grow well in. Part of what we're actually looking at both at JMU and broadly in the state is, what are the answers to that particular question? Where are the good soils for growing hemp? And is there a common sort of soil you'd want to have, or can there be different varieties that you would pick if the farm you have? Like my soil in Bristol's got a significant amount of clay in it. That might not be great for a variety A, but maybe variety B would tolerate that sort of soil in the right kind of a climate condition.
Another of the farmers involved in the research project is Brian Walden, who compares his test plot in Albemarle County with a test plot located in Rockingham County.
Yeah, the lay of the land, elevation I wouldn't say is much different, actual altitude, but the terrain itself. So I'm on top of a hill with a clay soil. He's on a river bottom with a loam. I am non-irrigated. He is, and he has calcitic soil. I have acidic soil because of the limestone in this Shenandoah Valley compared to the clay. And so we thought it would be a good reference for everybody. Now, fertilization rates are a factor, soil conditions, the weather, the particular weeks that is planted. So we got our seed late. He has irrigation that really helped invigorate the plants, and the available nitrogen that crop had access to made a big difference. I used chicken litter, and it sat for too long in the soil, so I lost a lot of my available nitrogen to, ammonia, volatilization, runoff, goes away. When you put on liquid urea, it's available, and this particular crop absorbs a lot of nutrients if you provide it for them. So the more you give it, the more it'll grow.
Virginia Farming Television was invited to attend a field day sponsored by James Madison University, and we were able to see how the test plots were planted. There were numerous varieties of hemp, an assortment of planting dates, and different cultivation techniques. On some stands of hemp, there was insect pressure, while on others, not so much. We also were able to observe the harvest of industrial hemp using a traditional combine. The goal is to be able to use standard farm equipment on this highly specialized crop. That helps to keep costs down for the farmer. When the combine had done its work, we were able to see the seed, fresh from the plant.
One thing, there's lots of green material in there that it should be run through a rotary screen cleaner. Yeah. But I'm going to borrow one, but I just didn't bother. Thank you.
It liked you, Glenn.
Yeah, I wasn't being too creeped out.
And we were also able to take a close look at the fiber, which was incredibly tough. Another farmer we talked with at the Industrial Hemp Field Day was Levi Braxton, who farms corn and soybeans near the community of Saluda in Middlesex County. Braxton tells us about his interesting background and how he became intrigued by hemp production in Virginia.
I was a 33-year veteran in the Navy. My field in the Navy was aviation. I retired as the aviation maintenance officer for a squadron overseas. And when I retired, my plan was to come home. Well, not home, because my home was New York. But my plan was to come where my father was at and start farming. And I did that, retired, came home, and my father pretty much sold all the equipment because he was trying to keep me from being another generation farmer. And so I hung on to the equipment that he had left, and I was trying something different. And it's not many aviation squadrons in Middlesex, so I went into the farming, and I've been farming there in Middlesex.
Braxton shares the story of the first time he ever heard the word hemp in relation to agriculture.
First time I heard the word industrial hemp, the only thing I could think of was somebody out here smoking something. And so I looked at it, looked it up, and did a little follow-up on it to see exactly what it was all about. And the more I learned about it, I started to get interested in, okay, there might be an avenue for me to have a future. And I jumped in and started talking with my cousin, and he was talking with people at James Madison and at Virginia Tech and other places, and we discussed it. So I said, well, let me try something different.
From military retirees to college students, there's something that seems to draw people to crops that have a long history, but might still have a viable future.
Well, a lot of them are really, they've heard a lot about it on television, right? And they've heard about a lot of the other issues related to cannabis, especially out west. And they understand that there's a nice dialogue occurring about legalization of both recreational and medical marijuana, but they understand almost to the individual that this is not either of those two. This is an industrial feedstock. And many of the students that actually get interested in our program have some agricultural background in some way, either distant or a neighbor or friends that talk about it, and they're really interested in learning. So a lot of times they ask, how can I help? How can I get involved? And then they start to find that, hey, there's opportunities for me to, like Hunter, to explore biochar and some fertilizer applications. There will be opportunities for students that have an interest in the question you just asked me about insect pests and weed load. Get out here on the farm and start counting bugs. Figure out which ones are present and when they show up. Is there strategies we can use? So the students are really asking how they can get involved. And they come to the table pretty well informed.
Food is becoming a big use of industrial hemp, of the industrial hemp crop. It has a very good protein, a very good omega-3 to 6 ratio, so it's kind of a direct replacement for, say, fish oil in your diet for heart-healthy eating. And fiber will come along later. There's some fiber work being done in other states and possibly here in Virginia, but I think the easy access to markets will be in the food industry coming up soon.
Braxton says farmers and researchers are working together with a goal in mind.
Industrial hemp in Virginia is that we figure out exactly what's holding this product back and get in there and work together and grow a successful product.
No one really knows what the future holds for industrial hemp production. With modern science and high-tech research, an old crop just might become a new crop with a promising future for Virginia farmers. I'm Jeff Ishii for Virginia Farming.
90 years ago, the Virginia Farm Bureau made our local farmers a promise to protect and preserve a way of life they worked so hard to establish. We want to keep Virginia, Virginia. Anyone can be a Farm Bureau member, and there's a local Farm Bureau in every county. More information is at vafarmbureau.org.
Virginia soybean farmers are hard at work growing soybeans to produce products you use every day. Candles, soaps, even crayons can be made from soybeans. Remember, when you buy soy, you're helping to support American jobs, the economy, and our nation's energy security.